This video will show you how to replace the front CV axle assembly on a Nissan Sentra. This will be located behind your front wheel. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. To do this, safely raise and support the front of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. Now after completing that, we're going to remove all 5 of our 21mm lug nuts and then the wheel. If you find you have a hard time gaining access to the lug nuts, if you have a hubcap, you can remove that simply by pulling it out of place. I do not need to remove my hubcap. Go ahead and remove that wheel, we'll set it aside. Now that we have the wheel off, we have a clear view of our front brakes. Let's focus on the caliper. So we're focusing in this area of the caliper. I'm going to be using a pry bar. I want to come in between the caliper and I'm trying to get up against my rotor deep inside. I'm going to attempt to pry this outward, which would drive in on my caliper piston. Now once you have movement from this, we'll continue on. The next thing I'm going to do is focus on removing my caliper bracket mounting bolts. Now when I do remove these, I want to make sure that I'm putting no pressure on my flex hose when I hang this aside. Just a quick inspection of that first mounting bolt. Let's start it back in a couple threads. This will prevent the caliper from falling down while we continue on. Let's move along to the next one here. We'll hold on to the caliper, fully remove that first bolt one more time here. We can set that aside. Remove the caliper from the area. We're just going to give this a quick inspection. I'm going to hang it right off to the side here. Let's go ahead and remove that brake rotor. A quick inspection, we'll set this aside. And now that we have the brake rotor out of the way, let's continue on with the removal of the axle nut here. Now as far as this axle nut, you may find that you have a locking cotter pin. We're going to remove that. I'm using some cutters. We'll just give that a quick inspection. I'm going to set it aside for recycling. You should replace these. Now we can start removing that axle nut. We're using a 32mm for this. You're going to find that you have a washer. Let's use a magnet, pull that out of place. We'll use some penetrant in this area. Continuing on, we need to use a hammer and punch directly in the center of the axle. You don't want to hit directly on the axle. You could potentially cause some damage. Now, as you can see, I do have movement from the axle, separating it from the wheel bearing. Let's continue on. Let's have a look along the rear of the backing plate. This is where we can see our ABS wheel speed sensor. I'm using a 10mm to remove my mounting bolt. Now, to remove the ABS wheel speed sensor, you might find that it's stuck in place. If that's the case, use some penetrant and some pliers. You would want to take hold of the base and attempt to lightly twist one direction or the other. On my application, this is actually already loose, so I'm just going to pull it out of place. A quick inspection of that sensor and we'll set it aside. Let's make our way all the way up into the area where our front steering knuckle connects to our front strut. We can see our ABS wheel speed sensor wire. Now, we do need to dislodge this from the front strut. It's easily pressed into place, so you should be able to pull it right out of there. You have one along the front, one along the rear. At this point, we have plenty of slack from this ABS wheel speed sensor wire. We want to be careful not to cause any damage, but we're going to be focusing on our 2 bolts that hold the knuckle to the front strut next. As for these 2 mounting bolts, I'm using a 21mm for both sides. Each of these bolts will look the same on this application. Going to inspect that bolt, and now I'm going to slide it straight on through there one more time, but I'm leaving this loose. I do not need the mounting nut. Let's continue on to the second piece of hardware. This will prevent this from falling down on us while we continue on. So we're looking from along the front side here. I can fully remove that mounting bolt. I'm holding onto my steering knuckle and backing plate so this does not fall down and potentially hurt me. Now at this point, I'm holding onto the knuckle and my front strut. I need to separate the two, but we're paying attention to our ABS wheel speed sensor wire. Do not cause any damage to this, otherwise you need to replace it. As I start pulling this away, not only are we paying attention to the wire, we need to pull the axle out and away from the wheel bearing. At this point, follow the axle all the way inboard towards your transmission. Now, as we follow the axle inboard, I'm making my way under the front of the vehicle. My preferred removal process is using a pry bar directly up against the axle and the transmission housing. I try not to cause any damage to my transmission. Quick note, fluid will make its way out of this area. We want to try to measure this so we know exactly how much fluid to reinstall in the transmission when we're done. Now that I have it broken free from the transmission, I'm going to make my way on the outboard side so I can remove the axle. There it is, friend. Now, prior to installation of any brand new part, let's make sure we clean and inspect our mounting area. I'm looking deep down at my transmission. This is where I can see my axle seal. To clean this, I'm only using a clean rag, no detergents. I don't want anything making its way inside my transmission. What I'm trying to do here is just make sure it's clean and it's not torn, worn, or damaged in any way. If it is, now's a perfect time to replace it. This looks good, so let's continue on with our installation. Okay, now it's time for installation of our brand new front axle. The first thing I do is remove my axle nut. Let's get this in place. Now, as I bring my axle into place, I'm aligning it with the port on my transmission. As I press it in, I'm going to find it only goes so far before it feels like it wants to stop. That's due to my locking ring. We need to make sure that we slide this all the way in. If necessary, you can tap on the outer area with a rubber mallet. Be careful not to cause any damage. Okay. The next thing I need to do is reach all the way into the inboard side of the axle. We're taking hold of the flange area and attempting to pull it out of the transmission. It should not slide out of place. Now, while we're in this area, let's go ahead and clean up the mess around the transmission and any other fluid residue. We want to make sure this area is clean so we can double check for leaks in the end. We're focusing all the way down at the far end of the axle next. We can see the splined area that goes into our wheel bearing. I like to use some anti-seize on this area. Once you've applied that anti-seize, let's go ahead and get this axle in place. We'll carefully pull down on the knuckle, slide the axle in and behind the wheel bearing, then we need to bring the knuckle up in place. But pay attention to that ABS wheel speed sensor wire. It needs to be up nice and high, not tucked under the knuckle. My ABS wire is safe. Let's get our two bolts in here. You can maneuver this around as necessary. Just double check that ABS wire before continuing on. This looks good. So along the rearward side, we have our two mounting nuts. As for this mounting hardware, snug it up and then torque it to 92 foot-pounds. We need to make sure we secure that ABS wheel speed sensor wire, slide it into place. If it feels like it moves around after you have it locked in, you can try squeezing on these ears or use a wire tie. Either way, it must be secured in the proper placement. Now let's secure the axle to the wheel bearing. We removed a washer. We're installing a washer. Install a mounting nut here. Once you have the nut in place, go ahead and bottom it out. The torque for this will be 96 foot-pounds. To torque this, it may be easiest if you bring the car lower to the ground and use a pry bar diagonally past the studs, preventing this from spinning on you. When tightening this nut, you never use an impact tool. You could cause damage. Got the vehicle closer to the ground here. Pry bar's in position. Let's remove the bar. Now it's time for our locking cotter pin. It comes straight through the port here. Slide it straight on through. Make sure you peen it over. Continuing on, we're looking along the inboard side of the knuckle just behind the backing plate where our ABS wheel speed sensor would go. I'm using some anti-seize along each of my two circular ports, especially on the threaded port. Let's install that ABS wheel speed sensor. When doing so, make sure that your wiring is not twisted. After it's slid into place, continue on with your 1 10mm headed mounting bolt. Start it in, snug it up. I'm going to torque this to 89 inch-pounds. Just double check, make sure that's secured in place. Let's continue on with some anti-seize along the bearing mating surface here, right on the flange. This is the area that's going to go up against our brake rotor. So now we need to have a look at the inboard side of the brake rotor. Looking inside this area, this is the portion that will go up against the wheel bearing. Make sure you clean any miscellaneous debris from this area, otherwise you may have a brake pulsation. Let's get our brake rotor in place. Now to help prevent this from falling off while we continue on with the caliper, let's make sure we secure it in some way. I'm just going to use a lug nut. If necessary, you can use a spacer. Now, let's get this caliper off the hook. As we bring this into position, we're paying attention to our flex hose. You want to make sure you do not have it twisted in a way that might restrict brake fluid flow. Essentially, if it looked like that. Let's get this in place. So I've got this in place. We have our two mounting bolts. We're going to start in each of our two mounting bolts. We'll bottom them out. The torque for each of these will be 122 foot-pounds. Double check to make sure that's properly secured in place. Now one last quick inspection in this area and we can reinstall our wheel. Since I do have a hubcap, it's easiest to install my lug nuts. If I just install the lug nut into my socket, then I'll have to reach inside. We're going to start on all 5 of our 21mm lug nuts. We'll bottom them out. Get the wheel safely on the ground and then torque each of these lug nuts to 87 foot-pounds. When we snug and torque these, we're going to do it in a crisscross manner. Torqued. Now as we make our way up inside the engine compartment, we need to make our way deep inside this area to our transmission plug. To make it so we can more easily gain access deep inside this area, if you need to use 2 hands, we're going to remove the coolant reservoir. To remove the coolant reservoir, we're starting at the overflow hose leading from the radiator just under the cap. It has a squeezable clamp. I'll just use some long nose pliers for that, slide it out of place, take hold of the hose, give it a twist, slide it off of there. Just a quick inspection. This looks good. To continue removing the coolant reservoir, you have 1 10mm mounting bolt along the top. Down at the bottom, it has 1 alignment tab, but we really only have to worry about lifting this straight up once the bolt is out of position. We'll take hold of the coolant reservoir, give it a wiggle, and carefully start lifting it up and out of position. There it is, friend. A quick inspection and we'll set it aside. We can see the tube leading down to our transmission. You're going to find that you have a small locking tab that we need to carefully dislodge. We can lift this up and out of position. This is also where you're filling the transmission from. To dislodge this, you could either use a small screwdriver or a small pick. Now, right inside this area here is where our locking tab is. May take several attempts. We're just trying to find that locking tab. We'll gently pry on it. We should be able to lift this up and out of place. There we go. Go ahead and remove that plug. Now there's the plug itself. This is not a dipstick. The next thing we need to do is add the same exact amount of fluid that we had removed from the transmission during the axle removal process. For that, if necessary, you can use a funnel, assuming you have one long enough to make its way down there. Let's get our funnel down in here. There we go. Now I have the funnel in place. We're continuing on with the manufacturer specified fluid, and we're topping it off with the exact amount that we had removed. Now at this point, I've installed that proper amount of transmission fluid. I'm going to remove my funnel, and we can reinstall our protective plug from along the top here. During the installation of the plug, let's make sure that we have it in the proper orientation. We need to make sure it aligns, press it in. Listen for an audible click and make sure it's secured in place. We do not want this coming off while we're driving down the road. Anything can make its way inside the transmission. This looks good. I've recycled my coolant from my reservoir. I'm going to add new coolant after installation. Let's get ready to install our coolant reservoir. Now, if you were to look closely at the reservoir itself, you're going to find it has a minimum line and a maximum line. These can be fairly difficult to see when it's actually in the vehicle, so I want to note it now. Up to the maximum is exactly where we need to be. So now as we start bringing this down into position, looking at the bottom of the reservoir, we have one alignment tab. If you were looking deep down in this area, along the fan shroud, you're going to find a slot for this to fit into. Let's go ahead and carefully slide this down into the proper position here. Of course, after we have the bottom aligned, we need to make sure we align the upper port for our mounting bolt as well. Now I'm just going to give this a quick wiggle down along the bottom to confirm it's not moving. If it is, we probably missed the port and we need to readjust. Assuming it feels good, continue on with your mounting bolt. We're starting in the mounting bolt and we'll snug it up. Double check to confirm that's properly secured. We'll continue on with our coolant overflow hose. As for this hose, line it up with the tip of the radiator here. We're sliding it on as far as possible. Once you have it bottomed out, continue on with your squeezable clamp. When you install these clamps, we need to make sure you can see hose on both sides and you are actually on the plastic of the radiator inside of the hose. Go ahead and give it a quick tug, make sure it's secured in place. Okay friend, at this point we finished filling our transmission fluid for the axle replacement. You need to go ahead and start the vehicle, run it through each of the gears. After that, take your vehicle for a road test, make sure you have no leaks, and make sure the transmission seems to shift smoothly. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.